I grew up in a pretty normal family. Dad stayed home and mom had some boring job. Everything was normal until the day I decided to Google my own name. And let me tell you, what I found was shocking. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you do, you will become an internet sensation. Trust me. Life for me was pretty boring, if I'm being honest. I didn't have any brothers or sisters, so I spent most of my time alone. Mom was always at work, and Dad spent all day cleaning the house and cooking. That's why I found myself sitting in my room with nothing to do. I was bored, so I switched on my computer and Googled my name. I was expecting to find maybe the hospital I was born at, or maybe a school certificate. But what I found was more shocking than that. I found a missing persons report, and it was me. I read the article. It was all about a little girl called Katie that had gone missing on a family camping trip. The family had searched and searched for her, but they never found her. They were asking for help to find her. Well, I could help them. I am Katie. But what did this mean? If they were my real parents, who were the people I was calling mom and dad? Then it hit me. My parents must have kidnapped me. This was crazy. Mom and dad were so normal and boring. Surely they would never kidnap anyone. I looked at the photo again. It was definitely me. Well, the only way for me to find out what was going on was to contact the police. I looked up the address on the missing persons report. It was a town about 50 miles from where I lived. So the next day, I took the bus there and went straight to the police station. I walked in, and the policeman behind the desk looked up and smiled at me. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I'm Katie," I said. "I'm the girl in the missing persons report, and I want to find my real mom and dad." The policeman looked a bit surprised and told me to take a seat whilst he looked up the details of the report. A few minutes later, he came back to me, holding a piece of paper in his hands. "I'm sorry, Katie," he said. "I have some bad news. We have no idea where your parents are now. They moved to another town 6 months after you went missing, but we don't know where." I was so disappointed. I had felt sure I would find my parents today. I caught the bus and went back home. When I got there, Dad was in the kitchen making dinner. I couldn't let him know that I knew he had kidnapped me, so I just smiled and went up to my room. How could they have done this to me? I hated my mom and dad, but I would have to pretend that everything was fine. Who knew what they might do to me if they knew I was onto them? I tried to carry on as normal, but I couldn't stop thinking about my real parents. I just had to find them and let them know I was safe. That's when I thought up my plan. I was going to run away and find my parents. I knew that my parents were going away the following weekend. That would give me the perfect opportunity. Saturday morning came and I waved goodbye to Mom and Dad as they set off in the car. I watched as the car went around the corner and ran back into the house. I had packed my things into a bag the night before, so I was ready to go. I took the bus and got off at the first big town that we came to. I had done my research and thought that this was the best place to start looking. It was halfway between where I went missing and where we lived now. I headed straight down the main street into the town center. The first thing I needed to do was find somewhere to live and find a job. There was a small newsagent shop across the street, so I headed over to it. I started reading the cards in the window, looking for any vacancies. A lady came out of the shop and smiled at me. "Morning," she said. "Are you looking for a new job?" "Yes," I replied, "and somewhere to live too." "Well, I have an apartment. You can rent it if you like," she said. Wow, she is really nice and so friendly too, I thought. I think I'm going to like living in this town. I wrote down the information about a couple of jobs that I liked the look of and followed her along the street. "It's not far from here," she said. We walked along chatting. I couldn't believe how nice she was to me. She felt like a friend, not a stranger. The apartment was perfect. "This is just what I need," I said. We agreed on a price and I paid her the deposit. Now all I need is to find a job, I thought. I rang the number on the first card. "Hi, I'm calling about the vacancy you have for a receptionist," I said. "Is it still available?" The girl told me to go in that afternoon for an interview. I went to the office and asked to see the manager. "Come this way," said the girl at the desk. I followed her and went into the manager's office. "She'll be with you in a minute," said the girl. A few minutes later, the door opened and a lady walked in. She smiled at me and said, "Oh, hi, you're looking for a new job then, are you?" Yes, I am, I replied. Well, I'm sure you will fit in well here, she went on. You can start on Monday. Well, that was really easy. She didn't even ask me any questions. It was as though she already knew me. Monday morning came and I set off for work. It was only about a 15-minute walk away from my apartment. As I walked along the street, people smiled and waved at me. Everyone was super friendly in this town. I soon started waving back and saying good morning. As I got near the office, a lady was crossing the street. Morning, Katie, she said. Morning, I replied. Then I stopped dead. Wait a minute. Did she just call me Katie? How did she know my name? Oh, maybe the lady whose apartment I was renting told her my name. That must be it. The next few weeks went by in a flash. I was working all day and I spent the evenings at home looking on the internet, trying to find any trace of my real parents. I loved my job and my apartment. The only thing that was making me sad was the fact that I couldn't find any information about my family. I was walking home from work one evening, and as usual, everyone was smiling and saying hi to me. Suddenly, I saw a boy walking towards me, looking really angry. Where have you been? He asked. I've been waiting over an hour for you. Why did you stand me up? What was he talking about? Was he crazy? I'm sorry, I replied. Do I know you? That's not funny, Katie, he said. Wait a minute. How do you know my name? I said. Well, of course I know your name. We have been dating for 2 years, he replied. What are you talking about? I asked. I've never seen you before. He looked at me. Oh my God, you are serious, he said. Have you banged your head or something? I don't know who you are, and I haven't banged my head, I replied. You must be making this all up. Come with me and I will show you, he said. He pulled me by the arm and I followed him. I was probably going to regret this, but I had to know what he was talking about. Maybe he was my boyfriend? Could I have really forgotten 2 years of my life? We arrived at his house and went inside. He told me to sit down and he went to make me a cup of tea. When he got back, he had the tea in one hand and a photo album in the other. Here, he said, have a look through this. I took the photo album and started turning the pages. My mind was in turmoil. There were hundreds of photos, and it was all me and him together. We were at the park, dinner parties, and at the zoo. Why couldn't I remember any of this? I looked at him, and he could see the panic in my eyes. Don't worry, Katie, he said. I'm going to get you help. Finish your tea, and then we will go to the doctor's. Just then, I heard a knock at the door. I'd better see who that is, he said. I heard him open the door and tell someone to come in. The lounge door opened and I looked up. He was standing there. His face was white as a sheet. It was as though he had seen a ghost. When I saw who was standing behind him, the color drained from my face too. It was me. Well, at least it was someone who looked exactly like me. This is Katie, he said. No, I'm Katie, I shouted. The girl looked at me in shock. Kevin, who is this girl? She asked the boy. Her name is Katie, he replied. I thought she was you. She sat down on the sofa next to me and said, You had better tell me what is going on. I told her all about why I was in that town. I asked Kevin to get his laptop and I searched my name on Google. I showed her the missing persons photo. I was kidnapped and I'm trying to find my real parents, I told her. She looked at the photo. But that is me, she said. When I was younger, my parents abandoned me and I was adopted by a lovely family. I struggled to process what I was hearing. So I hadn't been kidnapped? My parents must be so worried about me. But what about this missing persons photo? And why did this girl look exactly like me? I knew there was only one way to find out the truth. We would have to confront my kidnappers and make them tell us what happened to my parents. I told Katie my plans and she said that she would come with me. I was really nervous on the bus ride home, but I felt better knowing that Katie was there with me. It didn't take long until we were pulling up at the familiar street. It was a short walk from the bus stop to my old house. I could imagine Dad in the kitchen making some dinner and Mom would be in the lounge watching TV. Would they be happy to see me? Or angry that I had caught them out for kidnapping me? I opened the door and walked into the room. Dad looked up in shock. The plate he was holding fell crashing to the floor. I know what you did, I say. You kidnapped me from my real parents. I just want to know where they are. Then Katie stepped into the room. Yes, we want to know what's going on, she said. Dad stood up and walked towards her. Katie, he said, is it really you? Mom came running over and hugged her. I can't believe it, she said. I was so confused. I thought they would be angry that they had been caught. This was the last thing I expected. Sit down, you two, said Dad. We need to explain. And that's when all the pieces fell into place, like a jigsaw puzzle. They explained what really happened. Dad told us that they had gone on one family holiday, and Katie had gone missing. We searched everywhere, but you were gone, he said sadly. We waited 6 months, but we couldn't live there any longer. The memories were too painful. That's when we moved here, and we had you, Katie, Mom said, looking at me. We missed your sister so much, we called you Katie, too. Everything made sense then. That was why everyone was so friendly to me when I arrived in town. They believed I was Katie, and that was why I had seen the missing persons report and thought it was me. It was also so strange how Katie and I looked the exact same. Katie and I looked at each other. She smiled at me. I knew then that everything was going to be all right. Mom and Dad weren't kidnappers. They were actually my real parents. And I had a sister now, too, even though it was going to be a bit weird that we both had the same name.